Hello, everyone. My mic's on. Cool. Software snake oil 101. So yeah, my name is Christin Gorman. I am a software developer, and I work at Kodemaker. And for the last 15 years, I've been spending quite a lot of time and effort writing and doing presentations where basically I want to help get your IT portfolio into better shape. I want to help us all get better and use money and time more wisely in how we make software. And my advice, if we're going with the getting into better shape, my advice is along the lines of simple things like, let's go for a jog or let's do some push-ups. Kind of very non-glamorous. Simple, kind of, although intuitive, people see this and they're like, oh, but that's a lot of work, And so in IT, as in fitness, it is a lot more tempting for people to, instead of just do hard work like that, let's do the shopping channel instead. It's much more fun. And I understand this. I mean, who can resist? I mean, look at this. I mean, why go for a jog if you can just sit and relax and just, get fit while sitting down, guys. I mean, that looks amazing. Or how about this? Fat-burning tights. The kilos will just run off, and you just have to wear these things. And this, I mean, a vibrating thing you stand on, and you get a free air fryer. I mean, shut up and take my money. I can sort of get how this is more fun and more appealing than actually doing the work. But of course, as we all know deep down, even the people who buy this stuff, I mean, this leads to invariably our house being a complete mess, and now there's no room to even work out before we even have any hope of doing anything. We have to tidy up. And sadly, I think this is such a good illustration of where so many, especially large organizations, are with their IT systems. We've got too much garbage. We've bought too much snake oil. And when it comes to these personal fitness things and all the other snake oil scams, we have a tendency of thinking, oh, what gullible idiots fall for this anyway? And we're like, we have kind of, I suppose, a healthy, in a way, incredulous kind of disdain for the type of behavior that leads to that. But I mean, that is nothing compared to the ridiculous things we do with software. I mean, the amounts and time we waste on obvious crap in software is just so much worse. I mean, here, this is, from the private sector, Lidl, they spent, 6 years and €500 million, that is a lot of money, trying to get SAP to replace their existing ERP system. And I love how they frame this. Look at this. After a successful introduction, the problems piled up and they decided to pull the plug. What kind of definition of success is this? This is horrible, and this is all too common. And the public sector, of course, has much larger budgets than private ones, so the waste is even worse. Here in the UK, they wasted £10 billion on a failed healthcare system. The US, $50 billion and counting. I mean, they haven't even gotten anything that works yet. And of course, as most of us are well aware, we are in the midst of our own healthcare fiasco. In Norway, Summit has spent now 6.7 billion NOK buying the US software Epic in the hope of solving their healthcare needs. And everyone hates it. Everyone hates it. It's an absolute disaster, and it's so sad. And anyway, which is why I'm doing this talk. I hope we can start avoiding these things, please. So first, so how do we go about making or getting the best software? And I think the ideal situation to be in, if you are making or buying stuff, is if the user uses their own time and capabilities and money to make something for themselves. You're not going to sell snake oil to yourself, right? So if there's this, if the users are the makers and the buyers, you're more likely to get what you want. Interestingly, software developers, we actually are in this position. We use software to write software. So I'll get to how our software works towards the end of the talk, if I have time and don't get chased off stage by a monster, so I better speed up. Anyway, the larger the organization, the farther from this situation we are, right? We have an IT department that's typically completely separate from the users, and in the IT department we also have designers, and typically they also don't get enough access to the users. Sadly, we have a sales department, we have purchasing department. And I mean, like Venn diagram-wise, this is not really ideal. You know, in Norwegian, we could call this a U-Venn diagram, I think. And I mean, if we look at these two in particular, when you're buying, for instance, Epic and Helse Midt, you have a purchasing department interacting with a sales department. And I think it's important to realize these two there are different types of people go into those different professions. Yeah? The people who go into sales are not the same people who go into purchasing. And as we say in Norwegian, på seg selv kjenner man andre, that we typically interpret what people say and how they behave in terms of our own behavior, and I think this must be part of the problem, you know. So when the salespeople say everyone loves our product, it's amazing, the purchasing people must say, well, if I said that, you know, I wouldn't be lying, you know. So they must be. I don't know what's going on here, but I mean, the thing to be, we just need to be aware of the kind of incentives that salespeople have. They exaggerate and they omit facts, and you can't just take their word for stuff. You have to actually double check. When it comes to Epic and Helse Midt, this was obviously not true. Even basic checks around the marketplace would have told you this. They tried to implement it in Denmark, it was a failure. They tried to implement it in Finland, it was a failure. And even, you know, that's what people say now. They're saying, oh yes, well, Epic was made for the US system, so it was hard to adapt it to Scandinavian conditions. Well, look at this. Here's an article in the New Yorker in 2018 from the US. It's a very long, in-depth article about why doctors hate their computers. It's mostly about Epic. You know, the doctors, even in the US, they hate this so much that there is now a business in India that do data entry in Epic for doctors in the US. The US doctors, they read voice memos, and then they send it to India, and then people in India sit and punch Epic. That's some bad UI right there, if that's your way of dealing with your IT system. But basically, you cannot believe salespeople. That's like the first lesson if you're going to avoid snake oil. Just don't believe the sales pitches. Even more verifiable things like, oh, but we have millions of customers. Okay, but are they happy? I mean, millions of unhappy customers is, you know, check that too, okay? I mean, this is an actual photo of customers of Epic. You know, the poor people in Trondheim, they're out in the streets with torches demonstrating against the computer system, which is quite fantastic. But I mean, if you don't want millions of those, millions of these, that's not an asset, okay? So, just do some basic checking of what they're trying to sell you. And one of the things they also say is, which might be true, they say things like, oh, we're a one-stop shop. You know, if you buy our thing, you don't have to buy anything else because we have everything. This was definitely true for Epic. They actually asked for that specifically. But if you think about this for even 2 seconds, one tool that does everything, like what would that even look like, especially for you designers? I mean, is this what we're talking about here? You know, everything in one system. Yes, just what I wanted. No, of course not. And even these guys haven't managed to get everything in one system because look, there's a menu up there, so there's obviously more to this. You know, it's impossible to get everything into one UI. No matter how big and complex something is, it's going to be split into smaller parts and that you use individually, of course. Just like with, you know, this kind of toolkit. You know, and there's nothing wrong with having one supplier that delivers all of this. You know, that can be fine. But if you only need like 3 or 4 of these items, should you really be paying for all the stuff you're not using? That's one thing. But more importantly, what if you discover that there's like a new supplier of drills and drill bits that have this amazing system that's much more efficient? You want to be able to replace just that part without having to reinvest in the entire thing. You know, so the ability to actually change things out is really important because, of course, People like Epic who have this big thing, they don't want you to do that, because if they manage to sell you everything, boom, lock-in. They've got you, and that is precisely how they manage to have millions and millions of customers despite everyone hating their systems. It's because their customers are locked in. They have no way of getting out of it, which is what we're hearing from Midt-Norge, that, oh, we can't change it out. And that's, they haven't made it in a way where that's possible. And one thing they try to sell you in these concepts drives me nuts as a developer. They're like, yeah, but we have this platform, and we have this common, user experience thing, so that, and that's, what you need. But you guys, you have to know, you already have a platform, and you already have a common user interface that everything is. See, the platform, that's the internet, yeah? The internet is a platform where things can communicate. That's, with the UI, most systems now are web-based. Look at that, that's a browser. You have lots of options of browsers. They're typically free. You have different tabs, you can favorite stuff. There's a thing called a hyperlink where you can link from one thing to another thing. I mean, you can actually achieve pretty much all your interconnectivity kind of issues with just the internet, APIs, and a browser that lets you, transition from one place to another. You have these tools. You don't have to invest in someone else's platform. And when they sell you this platform concept, you have to make sure that they have APIs and ways to integrate other tools. Like in Europe now, as an individual, we have the GDPR, we have the right to get our data out of any commercial software system, but you need to make sure that you have the same kind of rights when you are buying some other system. You need to have ways of getting your data out of whatever you're buying. And not just as a one-off big sort of offload all your data, you need APIs that let other systems interact with them. So what you need to ask them, how can a third-party application access data from your system automatically? If they can't answer this, massive red flag. You need an API. The other systems need to have the ability to input data and get data out automatically, regularly through APIs that don't require them to make an application on the Epic platform or something. Yeah? So you need to make sure that this is there. You also need to ask, how is your system maintained? What technology is it based on? Yeah? And if the answer is mumps, then you run away screaming. Epic is written in the software programming language mumps, which was developed in the 70s and never caught on because it's horrible. And I mean, to the degree that anyone's heard of it, it's just like, oh my God, that's awful. No one wants to work in this. Make sure that the technology stack is at least halfway decent. Get tech people to validate this before you buy it. Another common thing that people try to sell you is that, it doesn't matter if this isn't exactly what you need because our system is so flexible. You can configure it to anything you want. Just like the Lorax. This is one of my favorite books when I was little. I can still pretty much recite the whole book by heart. Here, the Onceler, he basically destroys an entire ecosystem, cutting down all the trees to make these wonderfully flexible thneeds. And a thneed defines something that all people need. It's a shirt, it's a sock, it's a glove, it's a hat, but it has other uses, yes, far beyond that. And that pretty much sounds like lots of these, low-code, flexible platform things. They try to sell you that you can do anything. And it's not without merit entirely. I mean, my favorite kind of flexible system that can do anything is Excel. Excel, it's a shirt, it's a sock, it's a glove, it's a hat. I mean, you can do anything with Excel. You really can. It's amazing. But as we all know, it quickly gets out of hand. It's not easy to manage it. You need better control of what you're getting. And same can happen if the tool you're getting is way too flexible. It doesn't, fit your need very well. Also, lots of these things get sold in as low-code now. That's what it's called now. Last decade it was called model-driven development. In the 90s it was called 4GL, and it's the same concept gets sold again and again and again. And the idea is you can make software without programmers. Haha, wouldn't that be great? You wouldn't have to deal with people like me. Sadly, though, programming, what is that really? Programming is making a computer do something. That's what programming is. So configuring a low-code platform is programming. Yeah? You can't make a computer system without programming. So what you're getting with a low-code platform is you are buying into a programming environment that is very limited, and that's proprietary, that they control. And they typically sell this in with demos like this, how to build and deploy a low-code application in 10 minutes. But what they don't tell you is that you can pick any technology. You will find a similar tutorial on how to make something in 10 minutes. Here, build a React app in 5 minutes. This is better than low-code. This is here. You can make a web application with a database backend in 5 minutes. In Elixir, in Ruby, you can make a web. Again, getting stuff up and running. That's not where time gets spent. That's not what takes time. So don't get fooled by these demos. And again, what you're buying is lock-in. And that's what they want. Because once you are dependent on them for all your system needs, they got you. They can up their prices, and you're in trouble. Finally, of course, the thing to watch out for is hype. And I'm old enough now that I've seen so many of these hype cycles. And it's just so tiring. And we fall for it every time. When I was starting out, it was all like big data. And the very promises you're now hearing about AI, we were going to get that with big data. And then, it was cloud. Cloud, it was amazing. And I'm not saying big data and cloud don't have merit, but it's just, anyway, we'll get to that. But there's cloud, and there's blockchain, and of course now there's AI. And before you have time to evaluate your investment in insert current hype here, the next hype comes along. Yeah? And we see here with big data, all of these companies here, they made big promises about how they were going to revolutionize everything and it was going to be amazing. But years and years later, they were still losing hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And no one talks about that, right? It's not, some of the companies have gone on to do well, some of them are bankrupt, but the promises that you hear about, that you're now hearing about AI, just wait a few years and you're going to see how much, how little some people have actually got when it comes to real value. Cloud, here again, we were promised that spending on on-premise servers was going to be down, and what we see, the blue lines, that's spending on on-premise servers. Orange is spending on cloud. So this is the result of the cloud stuff. We're actually not spending any less on on-prem, but we're spending a hell of a lot more on cloud. And lots of companies are now taking stuff off the cloud back on-prem to save money. It's again, it's not that these things don't have value or have their place, but you have to use your head and don't just fall for the hype, And AI, again, I could do a whole talk about AI, and I'll just recommend this book. There are some things AI can do, there are some things AI cannot do, and there are some things AI shouldn't do. Yeah, I'm actually quite worried about all the hype with AI, because there are some things that it's really bad at, and we need to take that seriously. And sadly, the reason this happens is, it's a fantastic system. I'm fighting against a fantastic system. As long as you're using other people's money, this is a wonderful system. If you're managing an IT department, your money comes from outside. Yeah, so this is the management's dilemma. Should I use as much money as possible or as little money as possible? This is not a dilemma. There is no incentive to use as little money as possible, because guess what happens then? You get less money next year. Where's the fun in that? Yeah? If you get to invest in the next hype, you get to drug yourself on hopium. Oh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to change the world. You get to work on exciting new tech. And no one notices if you fail, because they're too focused on the next hype anyway, right? And drives me absolutely nuts. So finally, I said that developers, we make our own stuff so we don't fool ourselves. So I'll just end with just saying how our software works. So we have typically, this is the main stages of that we need for software. We have to write the code. Yeah? And then we have to collaborate, we're not typically alone, so we put our code, decide where we put the code so we can, share it. And then we have to build the code. The code has to be turned into some kind of executable the software can run. And then we have to host it somewhere. And for every stage here, we are totally free to, it's very interchangeable, and it's very low price. I don't even care what editor my teammates use. It doesn't matter, because they're interchangeable. Our code repository, we can switch from one to another. It doesn't matter. So if we're not happy with something, we can just get the next system, and it will still work. But again, this Yeah, because we have not locked ourselves in. We have made systems where we don't end up having the problems that everyone else is stuck with, sadly. So please just don't lock yourself in. Don't just fall for the hype. I mean, some of the hype will be justified, but just use your head. And again, buy or make simple tools. Just get the work done, and then connect them together with the internet, yeah, and the web browsers, right? Or in other words, just go for a jog. Do the simple stuff. It's not glamorous, but it works. Thank you for your attention. That was a bit over time there.